Hey folks, Steve here with the next video in the Korean War Designer Signature Edition playthrough series. In this video we will be looking at turn one, or at least some part of turn one. We'll see how quickly I can get through things, because we're gonna move a little more slowly than we will in later episodes, where we're just gonna be playing through the game. Here we will take our time to kind of walk through the different systems. Now, turn one is an abbreviated turn. We don't do everything that we would normally do in later turns. So oddly, we may have a situation where this video is straightforward and we get through it pretty quickly, where turns 2 and 3 may slow down even more because we're going to have more mechanics that we're going to demonstrate or we're going to do. And then things will shorten after that a great deal, because then we're just going to be playing through until big events happen like Chinese intervention and all of this stuff. Now, just to kind of round out kind of the table structure, I do have, I'm pretty sure, all the really needed game turn track administrative counters set up here. I'm going to go mobile for a second. So we've got a game turn track. We've got some additional tracks here for the reconstitution of UN units, the amphibious capacity track. We've got the tracks that track our actions, the operations for the individual units that are activated, our initiative track. There's a number of charts that many of these are on the player aids as well, so it's just handy to have them in both places. We've got a number of different charts here. We've got the close air support chart. We've got global tension track. In the glare zone, all through here are the different tracks that will show the UN mobilization and escalation stuff. I have those markers placed on the values that they will be on turn 2, just as a time-saving measure. They should be all at like the at start box, so I'm kind of messing around with that a little bit. To reiterate something I had mentioned in the introduction video, I will be doing the optional historical method of doing the UN commitment mobilization stuff. So ordinarily, the players can pick what they want to do. They can escalate and change those ratings by whatever measure they want. The con, if you go really hard and like dump all of the UN forces in at the maximum levels and constantly ratchet stuff up, is that that will affect the global tension track and could result in the game events leading to World War III, which is counted as a communist North Korean victory, I guess. I don't know if that's really a victory for anybody, but that is why you have to show some level of restraint. And rather than screw myself up with a bunch of different choices that won't make sense, I'm going to use the historical things, which will tell you what, there's guidance in the playbook to set the tracks to the starting levels on that turn 2 action, and then how to increase them over time. And we'll cover all of what that governs when we get to those parts of the videos in this series. Over here, there is the victory point track, which everything starts at 0. There's a couple of tracks over on the far side along here for North Korean stuff, saying like, did we invade Formosa or not? What are the action tracks and initiative levels? You can see my table configuration is a little wacky. I have to kind of go around the big table and sometimes move stuff. And over there on the far side, you can see I've set up all of the different counters that are not yet in use, either because they are units that are not, on some reinforcement schedule, or other replacement units where if you take step losses, you replace the counter. All that is just over there organized in a neat little piles, as well as some other administrative markers that are not yet in play, like the supply depots. Now, turn 1 has some special rules in it where we're not actually going to be using the supply markers yet, so the whole explanation of how supply works will probably be in turn 2. I'm not going to jump deep into it. There's a whole thing of rolling some dice, getting some values, assigning values to depots, which will govern how strongly your guys fight and all of that, and having good supply lines will mean they will fight more effectively. I think that's the easiest way to explain it for now, and we'll get into things deeper later. I will say from the introduction video, there's one thing I had misplaced a unit for setup. So this guy was like over here somewhere. That was a mistake on my part. He's supposed to be over there. I'm pretty sure everyone else is accurate. What is interesting is I saw a picture in the playbook that seems to indicate that this unit here should be right here, but the actual setup charts say for these two regiments to be together. That could be errata that has not been properly identified, but I cannot find any clear errata documentation for this new version yet. There's just nothing's been published as far as I can tell. So I will play it as the book tells me to play it right now, and we'll see how much of an effect that has. I don't know if it will truly affect anything. Um, so yeah, so I think that's some of the basic stuff. Again, right now I have these armor assets on top of the units that they're assigned. They should be under them, but just for my own mnemonic, I'm putting them on top for the moment, just so I can remind myself um, where to go. And in terms of strategy, right, this first turn is broadly speaking the North Koreans invading South Korea. And what I really, really like, and this is like one of those things that folks can take for granted a little too easily, I think. Anytime a game does a good job with this, it is amazing and helps the game a lot. This was in the original edition as well, but it is still retained, and the new one is the game is history part of the playbook. There is not a PDF of this, unfortunately, so you will need to look at the physical copy, where there's the turn one, and it just kind of gives a summary of what happened on turn one. And, if you're just not familiar with the Korean War, you just don't have much history with it or whatever, you can read that and kind of go, oh, okay, so this is what happened, right? And just to summarize that very quickly for you, right? These guys pushing down towards Seoul, these guys pushing down towards Seoul, especially given that this is clear terrain, that's going to be much more beneficial to the armor, the tanks that are accompanying these North Korean divisions. And then these guys historically kind of smash down into here and then follow this rail line towards Seoul to kind of help add to the attack, the sieging, the capture of the capital. And then the rest of these units were filtering down through the mountains or along the eastern coast. And from there, it was like the South Koreans just scrambling to try to have some kind of defense on some of these river lines. And then eventually to what would be the Pusan perimeter, which in this game is not clearly defined like some Korean war games I've seen kind of have a line drawn up on the map, this sort of rectangle shape of the Pusan perimeter. This game does not have that. So, if I really wanted to try to guess on like, I think it would be along some of these river lines. But I cannot recall with the full confidence that I ideally would rather have. So, and gosh, there's just a little bit of map fiddling I'm going to have to do here just because the plexi's not everywhere correctly. Okay. So yeah, so there you go. That sort of sets the tone for what's going to happen. And I think that's all we really need to worry about now. There are, I'll just bring some things down here. I have a number of the player aid sheets strewn about the table here since I've got all the extra space to work with. I really am principally going to be using the player aid that is destined for the North Korean Chinese communist player, which has, the counter table, a number of the tables that the North Koreans will need, a terrain summary, and then some more tables that they'll need. Likewise, there's a UN specific one that has blue charts, including the reinforcement chart, which kind of varies based on the initial intervention level, which, just skipping ahead for a second, will be 4. And so this just tells us we're going to be using reinforcement blocks A through N, which is defined on this table over here on the left, and what turns and when we're going to get those. So you can see it's if you had a higher intervention level, you're going to get more things consistently, additional things you wouldn't normally get and in a closer, shorter time frame. The other nice thing, because this game has a lot of player agency, a lot, which is very nice, there is this game turn record player rate, which covers all the way to game turn 12. But the first page is game turns 1 through 7. And it actually just kind of helps remind you what mechanics get turned on. So this is something that, like, I swear, if you've seen my reviews of the Dark series by Ted Racer, it's always great to see like a game turn special rules summary type of thing. Here, it's almost like a sequence of play, but it shows you what is different on certain turns when something special is supposed to happen or could happen. So in this case, if we're just looking at turn 1, which makes this really easy, we are only going to have a second action phase. So if you compare this, just say like turn 3, there is no political phase, there's no UN air missions, there's no FEC enhancement, no amphibious. This whole first action phase just doesn't happen. And we're going to start in the second action phase. So it's a little bit, as I mentioned before, an abbreviated turn. And we're not even going to have a UN air mission termination. We're not going to have victory points. We're just going to have the, okay, and now we go to turn 2 phase at the end. So, second action phase, there are no reinforcements, okay? Depots are not used. That matters for supply. North Korea has initiative, which, makes sense. We're going to use special columns on our initiative table, so when we come time to rolling on some charts, that's going to govern our operation points and all of that. There are special columns for that are used instead of some that are based on supply. Assets cannot be transferred or reassigned. So the armor units that I have up there on the border, I'm not going to be able to swap those out, though I can't imagine I'm going to have too much reason to do so. And then in the actual operation segment itself, we are not going to use the combat value modification chart at all. So that impacts whether or not your units are going to use their full value that it says on the counter or not. So sometimes that can vary based on your supply situation and different modifiers. Here, we're not going to have any modification. There's no UN naval support because the UN, the US Navy, is not in position. The North Koreans have 3 close air support points, which I have on the close air support track on the 3 space, so they can use these close air support points on combats to give them a die roll modifier. They can do that 3 times. And then activated units will only receive 2 action points. So sometimes they can receive, I want to say it's up to 3 or maybe even 4. I'm going to have to double check the rules because now I'm a little sketchy on that. But they're only going to receive 2, which means they have a limited number of things they'll be able to do. And then we'll have a recovery segment, and then that'll be the end of the turn. If you look at the example of what like some of these other action phases incorporate, there's usually some reinforcement deployment, and then there's the operations segment. And it's really the operations segment that is going to be where most of the action is going to happen. But if you look at some of these other steps on turn 3, like turn 3 is going to be a very different turn. We're going to do all these additional other things. We're going to do all these additional segments that are more housekeeping in each action phase, and there'll be 2 of these for a given turn. So there's going to be a whole bunch of die rolling on charts to get our depot supply levels determined, supply point expenditure, then comparing initiative, and then we finally get into an operations segment, and then some more housekeeping, and then we do it all over again. So there's a little bit of a nuanced process in this game to go through every part of the sequence of play and to do things correctly. So there's something to watch out for, and something to keep in mind that this is a 12-turn game. So the total play, is basically monthly turns. So one action phase is essentially, half a month's worth of activity, generally speaking. So, this is the later part of June 1950 on the game turn track. Some of these special rules for turn 1 and turn 2 are in the rulebook, so you can look at this stuff and just get some confirmation that Yeah, depots are not used by either player. You skip a bunch of those segments. Because supply points are not expended by depots, initiative is not determined during these turns. Instead, North Korea always has initiative on turns 1 and 2. When consulting the initiative tables to determine the number of operations a player can perform during an operation sequence, use the 2 special columns. Column labeled turn 1, we'll use on that turn, 2 on 2. There you go. Because there are no depots, units are not modified. Talked about that already, can't be transferred. If the North Korean player has already passed during an operation segment of these turns, and the UN player obtains a result on his initiative table followed by an asterisk, the operation segment ends immediately. The UN player can perform no more operation sequences. Trying to see, there's all, yeah, there you go. An activated combat unit receives only 2, not 3 action points. Because of this, there's no strategic movement, no all-out attacks, where in this game attacking is a function of movement, so it means there's some limited movement feasible, no all-out attacks, and no entrenching because they all cost all the action points of a unit. We already talked about the air superiority, no naval support. And I guess, okay, so the UN can't do any amphibious assaults during turn 2. And there's stuff about winter game turns. Not much to worry about there. So, oh boy, that's a lot of introduction for what we're trying to do here, guys. It's important to kind of talk through all of this. This game has a lot of, I don't want to say clunky. Clunky is probably not the right word. There are some laborious steps to walk through, diligently so, to operate through a whole turn. There's sort of housekeeping aspects. There are the action aspects. So, as I'm just walking through, all right, first action phase, no reinforcements, no depots. And just make sure I'm not. Okay, yeah. So I think with all of that, we're going to be able to get started here. And because this very first turn, we're just going to start right with the operations segment. Then we're going to look to make that roll. So when we do this, so in the operation segment consists of an indefinite number of operation sequences. First, the player with initiative, in this case the North Koreans, performs an operations sequence. Then the other player performs one. That goes back and forth until someone passes. Then the player who did not pass performs sequences until they pass, basically. An operation sequence is the player rolls the die and consults the initiative table, and then the player performs a number of operations equal to the result obtained in that step, blah bitty blibbity blah. Okay, so let's look at this from a North Korean perspective to get us started. Now, something to watch out for. We'll use our black die that came with the game. A die roll of 0 in this game is in fact a 0. So usually on a D10, the 0 is treated as a 10, right? If you ever play D&D or any other number of war games, that's usually how it goes. In this game, and there are other war games that are like this, a 0 is a straight up 0. There is no 10 on this die. So, something to keep in mind, just watch out. So we're going to look at our player raid sheet. We're going to look at the North Korean initiative table. And you can see there's game turn 1. And so we're going to roll the die, and this is going to tell us the number of operations that can take place. So we'll roll the die. And oh gosh, I rolled a 0. So that is a 1. So uh, we get 1. Well, I wasn't expecting that. The maximum we could have gotten was 4. It was more likely we were going to get a 2 or a 3, all things considered, in terms of the die roll. Um, Interesting. Well, at least it's not a 0, as I'm looking at the chart. Okay, give me a second to evaluate what to do with one operation, and we'll come back. I wanted to cover something very quickly in terms of the type of operation. So, once we've figured out the operations that we're going to take, as each operation is completed, we'll reduce our marker by 1, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to select an operation. Well, what operations can we pick? Well, as the North Koreans, we can do activation, we can do amalgamation, which is sort of combining units to build up to a division for them, which we're not going to do. We can't do reorganization because that's only for the UN. We can't do amphibious assault or evacuation or parachute drops. And there's not a Chinese or Soviet placement we can do. So the only thing we can really do is an activation, right? That makes sense, but just so you understand the procedure, those are the types of things that you're going to be picking from. We're going to choose as part of our single op activation. I can't believe I rolled a 0, by the way. Jesus. We're going to choose a single combat unit. Now, that means that if that unit has an asset, that's still part of the unit. It's attached to the unit. So we would pick one unit. Whether or not it has assets doesn't matter. You cannot individually activate an asset, for instance. So it is, I'm going to activate the unit with the asset. So when that combat unit has been activated, the owning player must use that unit and no other to perform a variable number of actions, right? So this is where the complexity of the game starts to kick in. So ordinarily where we would be picking where our depots are, then we'd be rolling on some charts to determine how many supply points those depots may have, or we'd assign levels to the depot. We'd roll dice to determine the number of supply points that impacts our initiative, which impacts the number of ops that we can do, which impacts which units we activate, which then breaks down into action points for the unit. So when I talked about there's a lot of segments and things to do in this game, you can start to see, like, right now it's easier because there's not as many steps, but when we get into these later turns, it will be a little more rigorous. So we're gonna pick one unit, and they're gonna take actions. Now remember, because this is turn 1 special rule, and let's say I'm gonna activate this guy right here, who is operating with a battalion of tanks. It is the 1st Division, so first on first. We're going to get 2 action points. Now I can keep track of my action points on a track over here. I'm probably going to not use those tracks very often. It's off camera at the second you guys can't see it. Probably not going to use those tracks very often if I'm just going to be doing these things very quickly. Okay, so the types of actions. So we're gonna take our actions. When the unit has completed all of its actions, it's going to flip over to the fatigued side. So we talked about this before in the introduction video, that the unit doesn't take a step loss and flips. In this game, when the unit is done taking an action, it will flip as it is fatigued. It's tired from operating. So this guy, full, not fatigued, fatigued, and he's not taken any step losses. Okay. So the options that we have are here. So we can do tactical movement, which will cost 1 of our 2 action points. And if we did tactical movement, it would then mean we could only do a normal attack. Now, this guy attacking into this hex, we don't need to move, right? Our plan is to smash this guy, obliterate him, then maybe this is going to cause a supply problem for him. I'm not sure. But we'd like to cut off his ability to retreat to Seoul. So this makes a good first move. If we're only going to get one move, because the next action, the South Koreans are actually going to be able to do something. We want to at least shut this guy off, right? So we're going to come down here like so. We have 2 points. We could do an intensive attack, right? So here, again, if we're not going to do any movement, there's no point. We're already adjacent. We can just spend all of our 2 points on an intensive attack. What does an intensive attack mean? Well, there's a whole other chart here. Attack type, action point cost, die roll modifier. So an intensive attack will give us a +2 to our attack, which is pretty good, right? An all out would be better, but we can't do that. So an intensive attack to start the war proper here, I think will make the most sense. So we're going to do that. And let's see. Let's get to the combat section. I'm a little rusty, guys. You're going to have to understand that. Okay, so we've initiated combat. Doing that. There are no adjacent attacking units to help, so this is going to be a 1 unit versus 1 unit attack. If there were adjacent units, then that would impact the way this combat is conducted. We may see some of that occur over here a little later. Let's see. Limitations. Okay. The attack value, because we're not doing any modifications, let's do some very intelligent things and actually zoom in on the action so you guys can see it a little bit better. So let's rotate these guys a little bit so you can see the action. Okay, so we're attacking from here to here. Attacker determines the attack value. Well, that is a nice big old 12. We don't need to worry about command ranges, which is something that we'll worry about in later turns. So we're just going to get to use the 12. Likewise, this poor little regiment is going to use their 2 value. So that's not great. Not great, as to be expected. And the combat ratio then is going to be 6-1, right? 6-1, easy peasy math. Now we're going to determine the natural terrain, the defending unit's hex or hexes. This appears to be, just in the clear, which does not provide, I think, anything to help them defensively, obviously. Be surprised if that were the case, right? What it does impact, and this is going to be something you'll see in the combat charts, is when you look at these combat ratios, we're at 6-1. The defender's terrain is non-clear or clear. Well, for us, it's clear. So we're going to be using this column, just to show by way of example. Because we have armor assets assigned to the attack, then we're going to do the armor subsequence. And this is going to be carried out before other modifiers are applied, so that +2 for the intensive attack we're not going to use yet. So what is the armor subsequence? Okay, so the attacker combines the armor values of his participating armor assets. That would be 8. The defender combines the anti-tank values of their defending units, including armor and non-armor assets. So in this case, this 1 unit has a 1, that red number in the center. The sums are compared and expressed as a ratio. Attacker's armor volume sum to the defender's anti-tank value sum, round the ratio down in favor of the defender. Well, okay, that's 8-1. And so what we're going to do, gosh, I think it's like, interesting. It's just so the armor table actually only goes from to 4-1. So I'm going to guess that use the rightmost column for attacks greater than 4-1. So we're going to use this 4-1 column. That is the best. And there's no other die roll modifiers here. If there were a river hex side, that could be a problem. If it were mountain with a road, broken hex, all that, doesn't really matter. So we're going to roll the die. This is not the combat die roll. This is the armor die roll. We rolled a 5, so that is a plus a +3. So we have a +3 due to armor. We now know that modifier. We know that the intensive attack is going to be a +2. So altogether, that is a +5. Now we would also need to decide, are we going to do close air support? And we only have the 3. I think the North Koreans would rather use the 3 doing something around Seoul. I know I just covered up the view with my hand. Around Seoul, probably more important to use those. This already feels like a very powerful attack, so I don't think we're going to do that. So no close air support, no naval support, no river hex sides matter. The defender's terrain is clear. Okay, so I think that gives us what we need to do and roll for the combat. So now, if I look at that same column, it's the 6-1 in clear terrain with a +5 to the die roll, 3 from armor, 2 from the intensive attack. We'll roll the die and see what we get. Okay, so I rolled a 6. 6 plus the 5 is 11. And I look and I see that is a DE result, which I'm reasonably confident will mean that the defenders are eliminated. I would expect so. We'll double check just to make sure. Some games it's like DE might mean something, but means that all the defending units are eliminated. Eliminating units are removed from the map and placed aside. Well, I think that is indeed what we've done. Eliminated rock units are placed aside. They may re-enter play via a number of different things. Let's see. If at least one hex occupied by the defenders is completely vacated due to a combat result, the attacking active unit and any assigned assets may occupy any hex vacated by the defender. Okay, so this regiment is just taken off the board, and then these guys can advance after combat, and it's convenient enough that we'll leave him rotated facing the camera this way to show that he has performed his op and he is done. I believe, and I'll double check this in the rules, but I believe that once a unit has been activated, it can no longer be activated for the rest of the action phase, I believe. Oh, case in point, okay. He is fatigued, right? And I'll go ahead and put the armor unit underneath him now to denote that he is indeed done. He is done. Okay. Yeah, a combat unit can be activated only once per action phase. So this guy is done, but he's done what he's needed to do. He's eliminated that unit, and he has cut off this unit from getting to Soul. So I'd call that a good activation if we're a little worse for wear there. Okay. All right. See, we're done with one operations segment already, guys. We did it. A little bit of a laborious thing, but we did it. So now we have to go to the UN player. And they're going to be doing something very similar, right? So they are going to have their own operations segment, or I'm sorry, sequence. It's going to be tricky, guys. We got an operations segment and a operations segment is part of an action phase. There are 2 action phases in a turn. So 1 turn, 2 action phases, so 2 operation segments. Within an operation segment, each player will have a indefinite number of operation sequences. So keep that in mind. It's going to get sketchy. So the UN player is going to do the same type of thing, right? We are going to look at our initiative table as soon as I can find it. There we go. Game turn 1. We're going to roll the die. And we got a 2, which is a 0. Okay, so what does that mean if you have a 0? A 0 is not considered a pass. So the UN player still will have an opportunity to go again, but because they do not have any action points, they can't take any actions. And so now it goes right back to the North Korean player. So the North Korean player will certainly go again, and they will likewise, they're going to use the same chart that we did before. It's the same one. We're doing this again to see what we got. Now I rolled a 9 that time, which means they get 4 operation points. Let's see, where's my operation? There we go. Okay, 4 operation points. Now this is a little bit more what I was hoping to get, because this now means that we're going to do multiple activations before the UN player gets to go again. So we sort of lucked out, right? We got this guy done. If the UN player had gone and they had rolled very well, it's possible they could have gotten 2 operations points, and then they would have been looking to move 2 units on the board somehow. Maybe pulling these guys back, maybe trying to get this guy somewhere, but they failed to do that. So with 4, we had a 0, we had a 9. This stuff should happen in whiff for me more often. So now we're going to have 4 activation points. We're going to activate 4 units. I think what we would want to do is probably do one here, clean this up, then do these 2, or maybe, one at a time. I have to figure out how we would want to do this. But I suspect it's going to be this guy, this guy, this guy, and then probably this guy. Probably, maybe. So that we have, maybe by the end of this sequence, this stuff cleaned up and we're already on our way to Seoul. That's what I would like to do. So let me put a break cut here and we'll come back and start executing those. Okay, let's start this next operation sequence. We're going to use one of our ops points. We're going to activate this unit here. We'll just rotate him to denote he's activated for the moment. And we're going to attack into this space here with this unit. Now, same things apply, right? He's going to have 2 action points, of which, by all accounting, a +2 being the starting modifier, +2 to the die. Now, we don't have armor, so we're not going to do the armor subsequence, as it's referred to. There is a question of, is this one worth using our air support for? And because we only have 3, I'm going to opt to say no, we're not going to use our close air support. Now, he is in clear terrain. There is a town here, Kaesong. And by the way, you just know, guys, that I'm going to mispronounce things really badly. So keep that in mind. Let me see if there are any diral modifiers or terrain changes for that. I feel as though Yeah, a town is not a city, and a city is denoted by just, I'll show you guys on the terrain charts. We won't show this every combat, guys, just so you see. A city is going to have sort of this like block that is meant to represent the shape of a cityscape and have some victory value associated with it, where a town just has this little circle here, and there's really nothing special about the towns themselves. And I'm trying to see if there is anything at all that that affects it, and I do not think there will be anything. Yeah, nothing. Sorry guys, this is going to go a little slow because I'm learning the system myself, and I don't see anything that would affect this that I can find. So, oh, something we should watch out for. This is important. Maximums for modifiers. Let me get that in. There you go. All modifiers of the combat die roll are cumulative. The maximum it can be is +5, and no less than -4. So that first attack that we had with the armor and the intense attack was the most we could have hoped for. We couldn't have gotten it any better. Here, the modifiers are only going to be a +2, and that's it. So +2 in our favor on a 6-to-1 clear chart, but there you go. So we're going to do the same thing, 6-to-1 in clear terrain, even though the town is here, that is still considered clear terrain, with a +2 die roll modifier. So roll the die. We got a 6, so +2 is 8. And 8 on here is, let's see, a D3. And in terms of the combat results, combat has affected the defending units, but not the attacking units. There you go. A numbered result indicates the total number of steps lost by the affected player's unit. Okay, so 3 steps. This is a 1-step unit. I'm reasonably confident. Regiment, yeah, 1 step. There's a handy-dandy table in the rule book that tells you how many steps a unit might be. So this guy just gets nuked into oblivion. That makes it now 2 regiments that have been eliminated. I'll make a dead pile off camera here. And he will advance after combat, and he will flip. So now we have 3 ops left. Okay. So now we will do some over here. Now, how do we want to do this? I guess, I'm sure I'm going to do this wrong. I'm going to activate this guy here to start. So that's that's our next activation point for ops. Or yeah, my second ops point. He will have 2 action points, and we will do an intense attack here. Now it's going to be a little bit different because we have some adjacency involved. So we're going to have to be a little careful about how this gets operated. Okay? All inactive units controlled by the attacker that are adjacent to any of the enemy units being attacked are going to participate. It doesn't activate these guys, but they will participate. And we could also choose to use the armor here. I don't think we need to. It doesn't really matter because we're going to max out on the armor table. And then the following units must attack every enemy unit that is adjacent to an active attacking unit. So these 2 guys are further behind. I should say these 2 guys are behind and are not actually adjacent to the attacker. So they can't help. They cannot help. It's almost like, why am I even, do I even need them to help each other? I guess the answer might be no, but you'll see why I want to do it this way in a second, or in maybe a couple minutes based on this. Okay. So we're going to have 24 to 2. That's going to take us all the way up to the 11 to 1 column on the combat chart. It's almost not even worth rolling a die. Like, we literally can't fail, almost. I'm trying to see. If we roll the armor table, we're going to get a whole bunch of pluses, and then we roll the actual die for the combat, and this guy gets nuked off the face of the earth. I shouldn't use the term nuke. You can do atomic weapons in this game, guys. So he advances, and he's done. Fantastic. Okay. Now we're down to, let's see, we used our first one. We had 3 left. We used that one. Now we're down to 2. We're going to use another ops. We're down to 1 after this. We're going to activate that guy. Now he's going to have to move. So he's going to do it. He's going to do a tactical move, right? Just move him up like so. Show the armor off to the side to help with this. So he used a movement point to advance. And let's see. Now, if we're doing tactical movement, this is where things break down again, guys, where we have to go a level deeper in the mechanics. If we say we are going to move, we have to declare the type. Now, our action point cost, we have 2 action points. If we want to attack, an attack costs 1 action point, so we would only have 1 to do movement with, which means we can do tactical movement. There's tactical movement, operational movement, and strategic movement. These different types of movements cost different number of action points, but they also give you a different number of movement points. So in this case, we're going to spend 1 action point to do tactical movement. That gives a unit 4 movement points, and by entering into this clear hex, we're using 1 movement point. We have excess movement points, but it doesn't matter. If I had moved into this hex, that would cost, this hex, that would cost 2 movement points, because that is considered broken terrain and cost 2 movement points. But because this hex is mostly clear, we are going to use clear as the movement. But even if it wasn't, even if it was also broken, the effect would be the same. We have enough movement points to move forward 1 hex. Complex stuff, guys. I know. Okay, so we have advanced, and now we're going to do a normal attack because we only have 1 action point left. So we're not going to get the +2, but it almost doesn't matter because we're going to have so many other things going for us. So let's take a look at this. So we have 2 defending regiments here, right? Show these guys side by side for a second. So who participates in the attack? Yeah, so a fatigued unit can still support an attack. I had to double check that, make sure I wasn't getting this wrong, because I'm pretty sure I had. So what we're really going to have is 18 attack value from the attacker. The primary unit that's activated, 12, plus the 6 of the adjacent fatigued unit. It's 18. Then we have the defenders. So 2 regiments with strength of 2 added together is 4, right? Easy. So 18 to 4 is going to be 4 to 1. We're gonna round the ratio down. So that's why it's not 20 to 4. It's 18 to 4, which means it's really 16 to 4, which is 4 to 1. Still clear terrain. So 4 to 1's not as good but we're going to have the armor subsequence, right? Now, here we can use the armor strength of adjacent assets if we want. So we would have 16 armor against 2. That's still off the chart, right? It's a ridiculous amount of off the chart. And no other modifiers will affect this. So we'll roll the die. I rolled a 6. That is a +3 bonus to the die roll. And there's no other modifiers right now. So it's going to be 4-1 with a +3 to the die roll. Oof, I rolled low. I only rolled a 2. Get that in camera. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So 5 is a D1. So 1 step loss will remove one of these regiments. And then we're going to have to see what happens next. Let's see. Yeah, and it was only a D1. Only a D1. Not a DR1, so there's no retreat here. Maybe we should have, we should have rolled better. We could have maybe used air here. It might have mattered a whole lot more. But that it was not to be, as it happens. So yeah, boy, that's just not good enough. Yeah, interesting. So that's it. That's just the end of that activation. So just having 2 units stacked together, which again, I think there might be some errata that says one of these units should have been right here instead, but we played it. This guy is fine, and this guy is fatigued with his armor unit in tow. So you might have think we were going to just squash these guys, but no, the die roll just wasn't good enough, and they didn't perform as well. Yeah, interesting. And it doesn't. There's nothing. Apparently we don't fatigue this unit, so it is still there. It is just. Yeah, that's it. Okay, interesting stuff, guys. Sorry this is going so slow. All right, next we're gonna have combat here to here. Right now, that will be 6-1. No armor in non-clear terrain, because technically they are in what is considered rough terrain. Now, there's not, as best as I can tell, any other modifiers that will affect combat related to. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, there is. If 1 or more defending units occupy rough terrain, then it is a -1 to the die roll. So this is the first time we're really seeing some relevant terrain for the defender. Try to see if there's anything else that matters here. Just looks like, yeah, just being in rough terrain, -1. And in this case, for activating this guy, that is going to be effectively an intense attack, right? So we're going to start with a +2, and then we're going to have a -1 to that because of this guy defending in rough. So it's really right now a +1 to the die roll. There are no other modifiers that apply here unless we wanted to use the air support. I still don't want to do that yet. Well, actually come to think of it, I need to think about this. These guys are all going to be done. We will use it. I think we kind of have to. Because this is only on turn 1, and we're not going to get another action phase. So all these units that are spent, that are done for this turn. And I forgot about that. So we're going to need to use our air for these activations, because that's the only way we're going to get any bonuses, really, enough that it would matter for things. So yeah, we're definitely going to use one of our air support abilities. So we're going to have a +2 to the die roll, and it's just going to be 6 to 1 in non-clear terrain. So +2. Hopefully we don't roll crap again. I rolled a 6, so that's better. So a +2, so that's an 8. An 8 on 6 to 1 and non-clear is a DR2. Let's see. Well, that just eliminates him. It doesn't matter about the R. So that guy's eliminated, and he will advance after combat. Okay. And one, two, three, four. All right, that's it. So now we go back to the UN player, who's going to roll for their activity points. We roll a 3, which is enough for 1 activation. 1 activation. Well, I think what we're going to have to do we can't entrench. So it's really what this should be about is moving units up to defend something, right? We get to activate 1 unit basically, and we need to try to get them up somewhere where they'll be safe effectively. And we've got some opportunities. To move, it's only 1 unit. So what we need to do is pick one of these guys down here and bring them up to soul, probably, right? Like that's probably the best move. So we would do probably need strategic movement. Oh no, we could only do operational movement. So it would have to be 8 movement points away to get into, say, like soul proper, or this hex might be better. Either or. It would have to be 8 movement points. For roads cost half a movement point. Railroads, railroads are actually 2 movement points, so the roads are actually better. And I guess that makes sense, because a railroad is not necessarily a road. You can't just drive it. It's a little weirder to try to drive a truck or something down a railroad track. And in clear terrain, a railroad is 1 movement point. So there's a interesting set of terrain chart stuff you got to look at to understand how we're going to do this. But I think this guy's just in a town, so it's less important. We could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be enough. So what we're going to do, we're going to send this guy, and we're going to bolster Soul. Try to have something else in there, and we'll worry about everybody else, later, right? We don't want, because the logistics hub is Seoul here. So the more we delay the North Koreans, probably the better. And then we just go right back to the North Koreans, and they're going to get 1 operations point. They're going to activate 1 unit. I think what we will do is we'll activate this guy up here, and it will be 6-1 and a standard attack with air support. So it's a +3 to the die roll on the 6-1 clear chart. We rolled pretty good. So a 7. Yeah. Gets nuked. And there we go. Now, what's interesting about advancing after combat, and this is what I'm not 100% sure about, is it seems like you only advance 1 hex. I was looking to see, like, okay, well, does this mean I can advance further? The way I read the rules, you're only advancing 1 hex every time, is what it seems like to me. I don't know if I'm not getting that right, but that appears to be how that would work. So North Korea is done. We go back to the Allies, and they get 2 activations. So I do think we want to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's not going to be enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're going to do that for 1, and then we're going to move this guy up to replace him. What we don't want to do is bring enough stuff up here where we're not going to be able to defend stuff once a breakthrough happens. And it, at some point, will. So back to the North Koreans. They 2 activations. And we're starting to run out of units that will really matter at this point. Because we can't do a bunch of craziness due to the 2 action points. We really have a limited set of actions that we can take. So we could tell this guy he's going to do operational movement and get 8 movement points, and he's going to spend 1, 2, 3, 4. And gosh, that might be it. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are some trails, it looks like, on the map. It's kind of hard to see, but there's very faint lines all through here. You can kind of see them on camera. Those are trails. So I guess, let's see. This would have been 1, 2 along the trail. 5, 6, 7, and then he's really out of movement points, and he's done. He took him all of his movement because the infrastructure is so bad here in this rough terrain. They're using trails to try to move south, and that's as far as he could go. That's one of our activations. And then I'm gonna probably activate this guy and go, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I have to see how the rivers work too. Rivers could end up being a real problem for movement if they work the way I think that they do. Okay, unless the hex side is traversed by a road, trail, or railroad. Okay, so really, this guy could have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not enough to attack because it took us all of our. Well, let's see, 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. He wouldn't have been able to attack. 1, 2, 5, 6. He still can't attack, but at least he's further up. I like that, so that's good. We'll do that, and then this guy 1, 2, 2, 3. Can't stack here. 5, 6, 7, 8, and just stop moving. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's done moving. And we need him to basically be able to help assault Seoul, is the idea there. Okay, so back to the Allies. And we got a 7 for them, which is 1 unit. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll stop here. So at least this guy moves up, and he's at a river, and he's in non-clear terrain. Gives him something. Is at least worth something. Okay, back to the North Koreans. They're going to get to activate 3 units. Now, here's the thing. The North Koreans are almost out of units. You can't really activate garrisons, or there's really no reason to. And so, at this point, we've got 1 division here, and it's in the glare zone, I'm sorry, but in Pyongyang, we have one with an armor asset. Now, should I keep something in Pyongyang? Maybe. The thing is, in the special rules of the game, if the UN tries to invade in these northern provinces, it will cause Chinese intervention immediately. So I feel comfortable that we could probably get these guys moved south, and that would be okay. So we'll start with this guy, And we'll do operational movements. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 and a half. And we might have to stop right there. And I think that's okay. So we'll do that. A little bit of a traffic jam. No worse for wear. And then likewise, this guy will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half. We might end up with a bit of a traffic jam down here. That could be the case. That could be the case. Okay, so now we'll have the Allies, and if I double check again, yeah, all the North Korean divisions have activated. So we're really the North Koreans are done effectively. Like there is no reason to do much more than this. So we'll roll. I got a 4, which is 1 unit, and I need to think about the positioning here. I think we'll move this guy. He just needs to get out, so he's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or maybe he's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I need to pull some of these guys back. Because there's a point where it's like I'd rather well, I don't know. Maybe I leave some of these guys where they're at. It's really tough call, guys, because it's about like where do we want to be positioned when the game gets a little more intense. And I feel like I need something over here that is not that unit. So I think what I want to do is go 1, 2. There's no trails even. Jesus. Okay. 1, 2 and a half, 4 and a half, 6 and a half. And that would be as far as he could go. But at least there's something, and I can move him into this spot in a little while. Now, going back to the North Koreans, they're going to pass. The North Koreans will do nothing else for the rest of the turn. They have activated all of their units. There's nothing left for them to do. They will pass, and they are effectively done for the turn. Now what's going to happen is, this is special for game turn 1. Depending on what the Allies roll, could be an asterisk. If the North Korea player has passed, and that has occurred, and the UN player obtains a result with an asterisk, the operational segment is over, even if the UN player wishes to perform more operations. So this next die roll is going to be kind of important. I rolled a 2. 2 is a 0 star, so that is the end of the activation segment, or the action. There's the end of the operational segment. So we're done. We're done with that. So we're done with that. Then we're going to have the recovery segment. And it's going to reference the rules, because I want to make sure I do all of this stuff correctly. So we're done. Let me get back to the... Yeah, okay. Operations segment, that is complete. Now we get to the recovery segment. All fatigue units are flipped to their mobile sides. Okay, so now we just do a little bit of cleanup. This might seem really tedious, but I play World in Flames, so having to flip a bunch of units back over is not a big deal to me. Okay, and just one more to go. Okay. All right, so all of our units are recovered. We have 3 regiments in Tejon. That is legal stacking, so that you know. You can check the stacking rules. They're on page 17. Pretty straightforward. Generally, it's 1 division or 3 regiments, brigades. Okay, so marker segment. We don't have that. No minesweeping. Blah, blah, blah. That's it for turn 1, guys. Boom. We go into turn 2. And that'll be for the next video. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. It's going to be another long video, but I think we're on the right track. I'm still a little worried that I don't have the advance after combat stuff figured out the right way. I'm going to have to look at that. Truly, I'm going to have to really evaluate what, whether or not we're doing that right. And it's entirely possible that I am not doing things correctly. I think that's entirely possible too. I feel like, so if I go by the game as history, I should have taken Soul, right? But I didn't. Now, is there something else I could have done that would have enabled me to get down there? Maybe. Okay, I did a quick just sanity check on the rules that we've covered up to this point, and I think I have done everything correctly. So, what might have changed things to get us closer to Soul? The die rolls over here would have been better. We'd be closer to Soul. We will. I don't think there's any in one action phase. As best that I understand the rules, I don't think there's any way we could have done any better, except maybe set it up so that I just don't know. Maybe if we had the units that are here moved up and attacked first, and then opened up the way for them forward. And I remember something like this happening in Korea Fire and Ice, where like maybe you need to start with the units that are furthest behind, because if they clear the way, the units that are at the front already can activate and then move forward. So I feel like if I had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half, but then stacking is a problem, so I might not have been able to do that. So I guess I'm probably okay. I mean, maybe I screw this up a little bit somewhere, somehow. Yes, probably, maybe. But I'm sure we will quickly rectify that in turn 2. Because now what I'll probably do is have these units, like this guy, go, 1, 2, 3 and a half on some movement, and then attack, make some progress, then move these guys up, assault. I think I can do that in turn 2. Okay. Now, what's interesting is it's funny if you go find a video of the Korean War like every day. You can. There's channels that have this kind of stuff, like Korean War every day on YouTube. You'll be able to watch how the front lines changed every day, and yeah, very quickly they went in and took Seoul. And I think in these circumstances, just kind of the way that the die rolls just came up, I don't think it would have gotten that much better for us. I maybe could have done things a little more efficiently. I don't think that really mattered. But also keeping in mind that in this game, the turns are month turns, right? June 1950. It's not like dates, it's just in June. And because we have one action phase, there's a little bit of abstraction here, right? It's not OCS where we're counting, each turn is just a couple of days. And then that should give you a benchmark like some of this July turn could be considered to be those final days of June. Because I suspect by the time we are done with the first action phase of turn two, the North Koreans will probably be in a position where they will have taken Seoul, and then in the second action phase, probably pressing into this space. Unless I'm really getting something wrong with the activation phases. So for you guys who've played this game, the old classic version before, and I'm doing something less than efficient, please let me know and I will adapt my play style to accommodate that. It's kind of tough to say right now because this first turn maybe should be pretty automatic, and if I fuck something up here, then it's just messed up, and that's on me. And I did things in a not great order in terms of activating these guys and operating and choosing my combats, correctly, or whatever the case may be. I still have to deal with the traffic jam problem. That'll just be a part of it, I guess. So there you go, guys. Turn one, probably a long video. That's just the way it is. We'll see you in the next one for turn two, where we're going to start to layer in a few more of those additional segments. It will be possibly a longer video, but we're not going to run through all of the combat steps like we did in this video. We'll probably expedite a lot of that stuff. So there you go, guys. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care. Keep gaming.